Today's story is about a church in Memphis that begins to experience very strange phenomena. Now, at first, church administrators believe that whatever's happening here is just a series of pranks, and basically everybody writes it off. But one church staff decides to look more closely, and he discovers something much darker was going on there. But before we get into that story, if you're a fan of the strange, dark, and mysterious delivered in story format, then you've come to the right place because that's all we do, and we upload once a week. So if that's of interest to you, for the next several days, sneak into the Like Button's kitchen after hours and add increasingly large portions of food that they hate to their fridge and their pantry. Also, please subscribe to our channel and turn on all notifications so you don't miss any of our weekly uploads. Okay, let's get into today's story. One morning in late February of 1982, a 42-year-old man named Sam Drash was standing inside of his office, which was inside of a United Methodist Church building in Memphis, Tennessee. And as he stood there, he was frustrated. His arms were crossed, and he was staring down at an empty bowl on his desk. So Sam was the headmaster of an elementary school that was inside of this church. This church building was massive. It not only had, the main chapel and this elementary school, but there were also dozens of offices. There was a full gymnasium, a full kitchen, laundry facilities. I mean, this place was massive. As for Sam, he spent the majority of his time in his office doing administrative work for the elementary school. And because he was at his computer all the time, just kind of doing this busy work, he found himself wanting to snack a lot. And so he needed like a healthy snack to binge on. And he found, mixed nuts were the thing he liked to eat the most that were, sort of healthy. And so he always had this big bowl of mixed nuts on his desk that he always kept full. But this morning, when he walked into his office, this big bowl of mixed nuts was inexplicably empty. And he knew the night before he had filled the bowl up, and he didn't come in between last night and now, so, who ate the mixed nuts? And so feeling pretty annoyed, he's like, all right, somebody must have come in here and taken them, okay, fine. And so he left his office and headed to the kitchen to get some more snacks. When Sam went inside the kitchen, he saw the church's cook was at the counter cutting vegetables. And so Sam said hello to the cook and then walked right over to the pantry where the snacks were. He opened it up and he looked at the shelf where the mixed nuts always were, and the entire container was gone. And in addition to that, Sam's scanning the other shelves and seeing that a lot of snacks that he knew were typically in this pantry were also gone. It was like someone had raided the entire pantry. And so Sam, he turns to the cook and goes, hey, was there like an event here last night where they would have handed out a lot of snacks? Because I feel like all the snacks are gone here. And the cook, who at that point was still chopping vegetables, he stopped, put the knife down, and he turned and looked at Sam and said, I'm glad somebody else has noticed this, because for the last month, food has been going missing for no reason. I don't understand what's happening here. The cook told Sam that at first, the food that was going missing was pretty minor. It was really just snacks and just here and there, not a big deal. But he said more and more lately, it wasn't just snacks going missing. It was actually stuff from the fridge. And he told Sam that, at night, he put a padlock on the fridge specifically to keep people out of it, in particular the kids, who would come in and like raid the fridge. He's like, it's locked. But, last night he said he put a ham in the fridge, this whole ham. He put it in the fridge and then he shut and locked the fridge. And then this morning when he came in, he opened the fridge up and the ham was gone. And he literally walked over to the fridge, opened it up and showed Sam the shelf where this huge ham was supposed to be, but now it was just gone. The cook told Sam that he had already spoken to church administrators about this strange issue, when he flagged this morning that this ham was now gone. And while they said they'd look into it, they admitted to the cook that they really didn't know what to think of it. It was just very confusing how this was even happening. At this point, Sam was just totally irritated because now he knew, one, he would have to go do his admin work without any snacks. But two, it was pretty clear that, some of the kids, probably from his school, had likely begun sneaking into the kitchen and taking snacks. And also very likely, they must have gotten a hold of the key to the padlock on the fridge, and now they're kind of escalating, stealing whole hams from the fridge. I mean, this whole thing was just totally annoying and really bad behavior. And so Sam figured he would likely have to deal with the kids at some point. But Sam told the cook, look, for right now, what I'll do is I'll also talk to administrators and I'll have somebody come in here and they'll replace the lock on the fridge. A few days later, on March 3rd, Sam walked into the church building and began heading down the hallway towards his office. For the past couple of nights, things have been quiet at the church. Sam had the lock replaced on the fridge, and it seemed like that had solved the issue of things going missing in the fridge. And also Sam had replaced his mixed nuts supply, and nobody had taken any. So it seemed like, whatever was going on, maybe there was a prankster or something that clearly, changing the locks and maybe putting some additional pressure on the church administrators to let people know to stop doing this had its effect, because things were back to normal. But as Sam was walking down the hallway, he passed by the kitchen, which was open, and as he passed by, the cook who was in there saw Sam and said, "Hey, come in here, I gotta show you something." And so Sam stopped, he goes into the kitchen, and the cook is standing by the fridge, and the fridge is open, and he can kind of see there's a look on the cook's face like, "Hey, you gotta see this." And so Sam kind of has a sense of where this is going. He walks over to the cook, and the cook points to an empty spot in the fridge, and he said, "Look, right there. There should have been several bottles of soda right there, and they're gone." And so Sam's like, okay, that's not good. Clearly this is still happening. But the cook is like, "No, this is after the locks have been changed. There's only a handful of people that have access to the keys, and it's like church administrators who definitely would not be taking this soda. So I don't understand how this is even happening." And Sam's like, "Yeah, you're right. That does sort of change things. How is this happening?" But before Sam could ask any follow-up questions, the cook was like, "This isn't all either. This is just one thing I've noticed. The other thing that's going on now, ever since we changed the locks, is someone is also beginning to mess with my personal stuff." He told Sam that every day when he was done in the kitchen, when he would leave, he would always leave his work shoes and his apron in one spot in the kitchen. He would leave them right there, he would leave, and then the next morning when he would come back, his things would be right there, he'd put them back on, and he'd get to work. But ever since changing the locks, when he had come into the kitchen, his stuff would be moved. His shoes at one point were on the counter when he came in, and his apron was put somewhere else. But nobody was stealing from him. It was like they were just messing with him. And the cook said to Sam, "I just don't get it. Why are they doing this? This can't be satisfying. They don't even see my reaction to this stuff. What are they doing just messing with my stuff?" Sam was equally baffled by this, and he just told the cook, "Look, I'll talk to administrators again and see if there's anything we can do, change the locks again, I don't know, but I'll see if anybody can help us here, because I really don't understand what's happening." And so Sam left the kitchen and headed down the hallway towards his office, with the intent to go in there and write up a report about what had just happened and hand it over to the administrators. But when Sam walked into his office, he noticed there was something sitting right in the middle of his desk that had not been there the night before. It looked like a paper towel. And so Sam, he walks up and he sees it is a paper towel, but there's a note scrawled on this paper towel, sort of like hectic, chaotic handwriting, like somebody was in a rush writing this note. And clearly they've left this note for him. And so he sits down at his desk and he begins to read the note, and it's totally upsetting. The note referenced the recent murder of this 15-year-old girl named Leslie Gaddis, who had been killed not far from the church in Memphis, Tennessee. This case was all over the news, and so Sam and basically everybody at the church had heard about it. And so he's seeing that the note is referencing this girl, but more than that, the note insinuated that there was something in the church's attic that would change everybody's understanding of this murder case. And so Sam's like, is this a prank? Like an awful prank? Are the kids who are stealing food and messing with the cook's stuff, are they also responsible for this? Sam's thinking, this murder case was all over the news. Everybody, including the kids in this church, had heard about it. This girl had been abducted from her bedroom in the middle of the night. It was horrible. And he's thinking, maybe this really is a prank. But at the same time, Sam's thinking that if this note is true, that there is some horrible thing or some clue or evidence up in the attic that might be useful to police about this case, he had a responsibility to share it with the authorities. And so even though he knew he might be overreacting a little bit to this, he called the police and said, "Hey, you gotta come down here and look at this." And so sure enough, later that day, police showed up to the church, they met with Sam, they read the note, and they went into the attic. And they searched it extensively, but they didn't find anything connected to the Leslie Gaddis murder case. They didn't really find anything of note up there at all. They also searched the entire building, just in case, but there was nothing of note. And so the police told Sam that, look, your first instinct was probably right here, that this was likely a prank. Whoever was maybe messing with your kitchen food, and the cook very likely did this too, I don't know. But, if anything serious happens, about this case or anything else, don't hesitate to reach out, but this does not seem like a big deal. And so the police left, and Sam is just left in his office thinking what do I do here? I mean, like, he didn't know who was messing with the stuff in the kitchen or the cook. He didn't know who had written this note. But it really started to seem like, somebody was up to something, or multiple people were. And he just wanted to understand why. Like, why is this happening? All right, guys, I just did something that I have literally never done before. Not on this YouTube channel, not on any of my podcasts, nowhere. Like, this is a brand new thing, new concept, okay? Now, normally when I, tell stories, it's just me alone talking to a camera or, on stage, but it's just me talking to you. That's the style. That's the MrBallen style, has been for years. But today, it's all gonna change because I interviewed a guest. That's right, we have a new concept called Storytime with MrBallen, where I sat down with the one and only Tom Segura, one of the hottest comedians in the world right now. He's got Netflix specials and shows, mega famous, super cool guy, and an amazing storyteller in his own right. And I talked to him not only about storytelling, but we swapped some stories. I actually told a story that's never been told before on any of our channels. It's really good. And it's just a fun new way of making content. So I think you're gonna love it. It's available right now. It's called Storytime with MrBallen. Let me know what you think. And if you guys enjoy it, I will interview more people and tell more stories like that. The video is live right now. Just click on the link in the description below and have a listen. Let us know what you think and tell us in the comments, because if people like this format, we'll keep doing it, okay? Thank you very much. And now back to the story. Over the next couple of weeks, food continued to go missing from the kitchen, despite locks being changed several more times. The church's cook continued to have his stuff messed with, and more notes, handwritten notes on various pieces of paper and paper towels, began popping up, not just on Sam's desk, but also on other church officials' desks. And these other church officials, when they got them, they were totally convinced that this had to be a prank. But for Sam, he just felt like, I don't know if this is a prank. It's not really funny. It isn't like the person doing it is really getting any big reaction. It's just kind of creepy and unsettling that somebody is, launching this bizarre campaign against the church. It didn't add up. But, even though this is all happening for weeks at this point, the final straw, at least in Sam's mind, happened the previous Sunday when he and his family were at church, and his son was sitting in one of the front pews, and he grabbed a Bible and he opened it up, and sure enough, a note tumbled out of the Bible. It was one of those handwritten notes on a paper towel, and again, it referenced the murder of Leslie Gaddis. And Sam's looking at his young child, his young boy, reading this note, being like, what's going on here? And Sam's like, this is totally unacceptable. It's one thing to be leaving these notes for adults to find, but now children are gonna be reading these notes? That's not okay. And so on March 17th, so roughly about a month and a half after all this strange stuff had begun happening in the church, Sam went to the maintenance crew of the church building and told them he wanted to set up a stakeout. Because by this point, Sam was starting to think, I don't know if just, some kid or kids from the elementary school are pranking the church. I mean, this has been going on for weeks now. It's sort of dark at this point with these notes that are being left all over the place. This doesn't really feel like just some kid. This actually feels like maybe an adult, maybe an outsider who's coming in to do this. For what reason, Sam didn't know, but he just felt like something's off here. And so his plan was basically he and the maintenance crew would stay in the church at night and literally hide and try to catch whoever this was, breaking in, doing this stuff in the act. By about 10 p.m. on March 17th, it was just Sam and the maintenance crew in their various hiding spots in the church, sort of centrally located so they could see the hallway that led to the kitchen, that led to Sam's office. They're all just kind of positioned, waiting. And so far, nothing had happened. I mean, the church was totally quiet. Everybody else had left for the night. It was just Sam and the maintenance crew. They're just kind of twiddling their thumbs, waiting to see what would happen. And at some point, the maintenance crew, they got really bored because there really was nothing happening. I mean, Sam was super motivated, but the maintenance crew's like, I don't know, I don't really care about any of this stuff. And so one of them decided to just, stretch his legs and just walk around the church, just to do anything other than sit here with nothing happening. And so he got up and he walked down the hallway and he's kind of looking in each room and there's nothing going on. And as he was walking towards the nursery at the end of the hallway, he heard some movement coming from behind him. He turned around and he thought it was, one of the other maintenance workers or Sam, but no, he saw a light come on in the kitchen. And so thinking, oh my goodness, maybe I've caught this person in the act, he charges down the hallway, he goes into the kitchen, and he can't believe what he sees. It would turn out everybody had it wrong about what happened to 15-year-old Leslie Gaddis. She really was, several months earlier, literally taken from her bedroom in the middle of the night, taken out of her house. But she wasn't murdered. Everybody thought she had been, and the news acted like she had been, but she hadn't been. Instead, her kidnapper, 42-year-old Ernest Stubblefield, had taken her in the middle of the night and brought her to this church and had been holding her in the church's attic for the last 119 days. And during that time, Ernest had her at knife point and basically watched her near 24/7 to make sure she wouldn't escape. And the whole time he's telling her, don't worry, I'm gonna get ransom for you, and as soon as I do, you'll be allowed to leave. But Leslie began to realize that ransom was not materializing, and it didn't really seem like Ernest had much of a plan, and eventually he would just have to get rid of her. And so she knew, like, if she didn't save herself, she was likely gonna get killed. And so in the rare moments where Leslie was not being watched by Ernest, like for example, when they were down in the kitchen and getting food after hours, they critically had been listening the whole time, and they would hear when the locks had been changed on the fridge, and they would see where the keys were being hid, and they would just sneak down, get the keys, open the fridge up, and they would eat. Well, when they were doing that, Leslie made a point of not just taking a little food for she and Ernest, but she would take a ton of food, like way more than two people would need, and she would tell Ernest, oh, it's just because, it's more for us. But really what she was doing was trying her best to signal to the people in the church that something weird's going on here, huge portions of food are going missing. And then also she would, move around the cook's stuff, his shoes and his apron. And then in the very rare moments where she truly wasn't being watched, she would run off, grab a paper towel and scrawl things like, my name is Leslie, I'm in the attic, and leave them on people's desks, hoping that that would finally get somebody's attention. But unfortunately, pretty much everybody in the church thought it was a joke, except for Sam. However, when he contacted the police and told them, like, hey, I got this note that sort of suggests that maybe Leslie is being held in the attic, well, they went up there and they searched the attic, and they didn't find her because Ernest had found a special crawl space in the attic that nobody knew about. And so she was just feet away from police, but they didn't know she was up there. But luckily, Sam did not stop. He continued to question what was happening, continued to think all this stuff was super weird. And so eventually he has this stakeout. And that maintenance worker, after being so bored, was doing his loop, saw the light come on in the kitchen, goes in the kitchen, and what does he see? But Leslie Gaddis, alive in the flesh, standing right there. She saw him, Ernest is right behind her, and she just made a run for it and literally dove into the maintenance worker's hands, just praying that he would not run away because Ernest was sure to grab her and do something to her. But the maintenance worker, he grabbed Leslie, Ernest took off running, and he would eventually be caught. Ernest was convicted of kidnapping and sentenced to 20 years in prison. As for Leslie, she was hailed as a hero for saving herself, and she would go on to become a successful lawyer who would serve on the board of the Commission on Missing and Exploited Children. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know what you thought of today's episode in the comments. And remember, we have hundreds of videos for you to binge right now. But if you're looking for a recommendation from me of that one video that's worth your time, well, it's this one right here. So give it a watch. All right, until next time, see ya.